Thank you so much. Thank you, Tanya. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to have a discussion today about a subject that's, to me, very important. Today we're going to discuss a concept called resilience. And resilience is just as it sounds. It's literally the capacity to have a setback and then dust yourself off and get back up again. It turns out that when we study people who manage behavioral change, let's say someone loses weight and keeps it off, or let's say someone has finally quit smoking after many years of time, it turns out this skill is one of the absolute key skills, and it can be taught, so it's an exciting subject. And so today we're going to be talking primarily as to how resilience is associated with weight management. Managing weight, one of the kind of key behavioral changes that so many struggle with. Weight management is filled with obstacles. Mm-hmm. If we talk about weight management, I always, and this has become really a central component of my career, I'm always describing to individuals, whether it's physicians, whether it's patients, or even government, describing that struggling with weight, as our example today, is a true, chronic, difficult, complex medical condition. Mm-hmm. And like with anything else that's very difficult, you can anticipate that there'll be setbacks. One of the only guarantees, Tanya, that I'll give to my patients, mm-hmm. maybe the only one actually, is I'll tell them that their path forward, even if it's a successful one, will be filled with setbacks. And their story will not be written by whether they have setbacks or not. It'll be actually written by how they respond to them. That's the subject today. That's resilience.
You've often talked about it being a journey, and so setbacks, they're saying it's just to be expected.
Setbacks are to be expected. Look at the underlying pathophysiology of struggling with weight. Wow. These are all the influences that are from the environment or within us, biologically, physiologically, hormonally. Our central nervous system is affected directly, where appetite is affected.
So what am I looking at right now?
Well, don't worry about the detail.
Okay.
I use this slide just to demonstrate that this is a complex system that is within us to determine our weight. We know, for example, that when someone loses weight, their body will put into play a whole bunch of systems to drive their weight back up. That's just an example of the complexities that people face, and that's why we call it a true chronic medical condition. And yes, it will be filled with setbacks. So I wish it was this easy. If we were a computer, we'd say, well, I have a goal to get to a healthy weight, and so the fruit is a better choice. But humans don't work that way because of all these complexities.
So we're not computers.
We're not computers. In fact, we're very complex. And so it's not whether you get knocked down, it's whether you get up. Here's a picture of Sylvester Stallone in Rocky. What's interesting about here is his body mass index is 35 in that picture. If anyone knows, body mass index means it's a measurement of risk in weight. Mm-hmm. And it's a very poor measure. Just in this example, his BMI is 35, which calls him two-stage or class 2 obese. Of course, he's very healthy in this picture. And so it just goes to show you how BMI is not really a good measure of risk. We have many different ways to measure risk, and that's one that we don't use anymore. So today I'm going to be talking about getting to one's best weight and how resilience is such an important skill to getting there and staying there. But I always like to point out to individuals that when it comes to our health, I know doctors seem to think that they themselves are in some ways responsible for much of a patient's health, and it's actually not true. I'm always describing to individuals that their health, their quality of life, whether they will suffer from chronic disease or not, is primarily in their hands. Okay. The statistics we use, quoted at the bottom of the slide here, is that 80+% of all chronic disease, think cancer, think heart disease, think lung disease, think stroke, 80+% of these chronic diseases are determined based on where we are with these 5 behaviors. So someone's at a best weight and they're eating healthily, mm-hmm. and they're fit, and they're either not drinking or drinking moderately, or also not smoking, then they duck under all those conditions, or 80% rather. And so whether they do this or not is really not in the doctor's hands. It's in an individual's hands.
So what about number 3, cardiovascular fitness? You had said something about sedentary nature in human beings.
Well, when you look at this list, what you'll learn is that, or what we've learned is that humans are really driven to these behaviors. we're driven to gain weight. We're driven to eat unhealthily because foods with fat and sugar and salt in them are adaptive 20,000 years ago, but work against us now, and they're, of course, everywhere and on every street corner. Sedentary lifestyles were very important 20,000 years ago. So it's pleasurable. Anyone listening, by the way, who wants to kick up their feet and put it on the chair beside them and recognize that being sedentary is pleasurable. It's an adaptive trait 20,000 years ago. And so humans have difficulty adapting these kind of behaviors. And so remember we talked about the complexity of making behavioral change.
Right.
Well, today's subject is resilience. And so when things don't go well, how do you manage that? That's what we're going to talk about today. So today we're talking about the behavior of best weight, and so getting to a best weight. And so what kind of obstacles can pop up? What kind of setbacks are there? So today's subject is responding to setbacks. So this is one of the classic ones. So I don't know if anyone out there has ever had this experience where they have been trying to manage their weight, trying to eat well, get to a best weight, and they had an off-track eating event, overeating, or let's say in the evening or leaving a restaurant. That is considered to be a classic setback. And on any path towards the best weight, that certainly will be something that will happen. What about this one? Has anyone ever out there been doing well or thinking they're doing well and get on the scale, and the scale doesn't show what you're hoping for? That's a classic setback, and it's a potential response that can throw someone off track.
It can be really discouraging. You go on the scale, you have all these expectations, you're going to see this special number, and then it doesn't happen. Sure,
it might go up. You might actually be doing poorly and see it go up, which only kind of reiterates to yourself that you're doing bad. These are classic setbacks. So anyone listening today, consider that these things are the actual events that are going to happen. And today's discussion is how do you respond to them?
Okay.
The last one is, I don't know if this has ever happened to anyone, seeing yourself in a mirror or in a photograph. When it comes to weight management, this can be a very difficult experience for many. So many would say, I don't want to see, a picture. I don't like getting in a picture. I look at myself in the mirror. I can only look quickly.
Or delete that photo. I don't want to see that photo. Don't post that photo.
I say my mother-in-law all the time. We take pictures. She's like, delete that. Delete that. Get rid of that. And she actually looks good. So it's actually our image, and that's, a subject for another time. So the question becomes, well, what follows setbacks? And so now we're really getting into the thick of it. And so what type of things follow a setback? Well, the answer is thinking. Humans are a thinking species. It's our competitive advantage. A real important point today is to understand that we have done so well on this planet because we think. We have that capacity. We have these big cortexes where all this information can be processed. And so we respond to our environment through thinking. We're automatic thinkers.
But sometimes our thinking gets us in trouble.
Right. This would be an example how our thinking could get us in trouble. So what kind of thinking follows a setback? The setbacks that we gave examples of, well, it's best to characterize it as three kinds. There's self-critical thinking, what I call ostrich thinking, and something also called resilience thinking. You want to be far on the right. You can move from being a self-critical thinker or ostrich thinker to a resilience thinker. And actually that transition is what behavioral weight management programs do. Changing one's thinking, classically in psychology that's called cognitive restructuring our thinking. That's a foundation to any good behavioral weight management program. A lot of people I know out there think that losing weight is about diet or exercise. It really isn't. Really, really isn't. And one of the key changes that happens when someone loses weight and keeps it off is their thinking change. So under this set of circumstances, they used to think this way, and now they think this way. That's the change. So let's go through each of these examples. One, self-critical thinking. So Tanya, you're here. I'm going to use you as an example. You're maybe an unwilling volunteer. But the question becomes, so let's say you're trying to manage your weight, and the first kind of a setback happens. We use that classic of an overeating episode. You're out for dinner, or maybe and your plan was A and it went B, or it's the evening and you took in too many calories. How do you feel, not during, because when we eat delicious food, we feel an opioid experience. It's a pleasure. I'm not talking about during, but after. Right? How would you characterize how you feel afterwards?
Yeah, so my weakness are sour cream Ruffles chips.
Delicious.
And delicious. And then I will try to have a bowl, and it will just go, the entire bag will disappear. So the feeling afterwards is, I just feel awful.
So awful, that's a feeling. Anything else?
I feel kind of sick a little bit.
Physically not well, okay.
Yeah, just disappointed.
Disappointed is an emotion.
Upset.
Upset's an emotion. I like those.
Embarrassed.
Embarrassed. I think a lot of people listening will be able to identify with that, whether it's frustration or disappointment or feeling upset or embarrassed. And so my point here, very important, is that emotions don't come from outer space. This is a classic tenet of modern psychology, that our feelings, these emotions, actually come from our thinking. Thoughts lead to feelings. That's what's demonstrated here in this slide. And so what that means is that each of those feelings you had were actually preceded by thoughts.
Okay, all right.
So the next question you would ask, and anyone out there would ask, well, if I feel those ways, what am I thinking? What thoughts? Now, I might find, you might find that a lot of people out there will say, I don't think anything. What do you mean? So we'll talk a little bit about what might be the case of ostrich thinking, where many people say, thoughts? I don't have any thoughts. I just move on. So that's an example we'll get to. But in the case that someone can identify their thoughts, and that's important. You can't change something you can't identify, and changing thinking is important.
Okay, I think I understand.
So what would the thoughts be that are leading to those emotions? There you are in that scene, the bag of chips is empty.
Oh, not again. Oh, gosh. Why did I do that? What's my problem? Why am I eating these chips?
Yet you did do that, and so I'm not supporting your thinking, but where does it go? So what does that say about you? Maybe it says I'm not strong enough. Maybe I'm weak. And what does that say about your likelihood of succeeding? Often people will go and say, well, maybe I'm not going to, I can't do this.
Right.
We find in psychology, though I'm a family physician, we find what we call root thoughts, kind of the bottom thoughts, and it's very important if you're changing thoughts to get to the bottom ones. The root, like a root of a tree.
Right.
And so ultimately, one's feeling disappointed and upset and awful, classically because a thought is happening underneath all of those that's saying, maybe I just can't do this. Kind of like a defeated feeling, a very negative thought pattern. These are the classic thoughts that are in response to setbacks. There's a bunch of them in this slide. They kind of land on, oh, well, I guess I'm never going to succeed anyway, and I can't do this. And so what we say in clinical psychology and in medicine and in behavioral change, we say, where's the evidence? The key 3 words in all of clinical psychology, not something which we're going to go into too much today, but the 3 key words are, where's the evidence? Once you capture the thought, I can't do this, so you ask someone, where's the evidence that you can't do this? And then someone says, well, my past. Like I've tried to lose weight before and I've failed. Evidence, Dr. Macklin, I have an open and shut case.
Like proof. You're looking for proof?
Right. They would say I have proof. I have that 1998, 2001, 2005, all these efforts. But then we say, remember earlier I mentioned that struggling with weight is a true, chronic, complex medical condition? Diet and exercise does not treat that. Going on a diet, reading a book, going to the gym, eating healthily, those are all great behaviors, but they're not going to create a sustained weight loss. And so I like to say to people that your evidence of the past is probably inadmissible in supporting your thought that you can't do this. It's a great first challenge to say to someone that, your past, you were never treated. If an asthmatic came into my office and said, I'm never going to be not short of breath, I'm never not going to be coughing, but they didn't know they have asthma, we'd say, no, you have asthma, and there's actually a treatment for it. So most out there struggling with their weight have just simply never been treated. And a complex and comprehensive behavioral weight management program, many could succeed where they've not succeeded in the past. So that's an example, because if you don't challenge those thinkings, then there's this spiral. And so many out there would be familiar with, once I'm off, or I'm off the wagon, or I'm an on or off person. And once those thoughts are unchallenged and they're convinced internally automatically that they can't do this, then they're not going to succeed.
That's the defeatist thought pattern you were talking about before?
Right. Often even resulting in an emotion of resignation. Like clearly I'm not going to, we're going out for dinner tonight? Well, may as well, because I'm coming with you because I'm not succeeding anyway. I can't do this. And then one more noble effort, unfortunately, because of a non-comprehensive support, goes to the side. Unfortunate. So leading to these unhelpful spirals, what happens is the brain will go into this fight, flight. It's really like a threat. Failure is a threat to the human brain. And so the human cortex shuts down, no learning takes place. And actually that individual failed to repeat that behavior, fated rather.
Right. In our last online seminar, we spoke about the fight or flight or freeze. So that was speaking to anxiety and so on. So it's the same part of the brain?
Right, absolutely. And in this case, what's key is that once it's triggered, the other parts of the brain where learning takes place shut down, and we can't learn. You know, the classic example is someone, say, and there'll be a lot of people listening today who are professionals. And so if you really want an example of what resilience is, use your profession as an example. So let's say that someone, and this is a question to everyone out there, let's say that there you are and a junior within your office comes to you and says, there's a crisis, there's a problem. Within your scope of responsibility, they say this problem is happening or this problem is happening, and they go through the list and they're panicked. Mm-hmm. So I like to ask that person, what would happen next in that scenario? You're in your profession, you have pretty good confidence in what you do. And often what I'll hear someone will say is, oh, well, in that case, what I'll do is I'll ask a bunch of questions, kind of get to the bottom of it, calm them down, because I know when you're emotional, you can't really learn, and you can't really move through the problem. We'll put together a plan based on what we figured out, contact the people we have to contact, and follow up on the plan to make sure it's working, and learn from the experience.
Right, that sounds pretty normal.
That is called, and that's the subject of today, that's actually called resilience. It means facing a setback, dusting yourself off, and moving forward and learning. So it turns out it's a great example for someone who's trying to think, well, what would it look like for me to be resilient in my behavioral change, let's say weight management? Well, it would look like when a setback comes, ask yourself, what would I do if this was work? Mm-hmm. If this was the work environment. It's a great example of the disparity that people will have in resilience in an area they're confident in compared to an area where they are not confident in, where they've struggled. And so helping someone develop resilience and confidence is part of what a behavioral weight management program will do. The second method of thinking we call the Ostrich thinking. It's pretty simple. The concept is that, remember the emotions we talked about? No one likes feeling awful, sick, disappointed, upset, embarrassed. So there's a common defense mechanism amongst humans where we'll kind of not go there. Mm-hmm. So in the aftermath, with the empty bag of chips in the example you gave, what will happen is someone will just end up saying, you know what, tomorrow's another day, I don't want to think about it, whatever, it was a very stressful day, I'll get back on tomorrow.
Right.
What's happening there is they're, with a defense mechanism, actually not going there, not only not analyzing their thinking, but certainly not being in a position to change it, and definitely not being in a position to learn. That also doesn't work, because the example of the person at work stopped, they collected data, they asked questions, they recognized that they didn't like the feeling, they studied it, they came up with a plan. They actually used the setback as a motivation because it spurred change. Here, the ostrich will put their head in the sand, no learning will take place, and again, just like the other example, they'll be fated to repeat that behavior. Same parts of the brain get activity, cortex shuts down, and no learning takes.
So we have self-critical thinking and ostrich thinking. So now we're at resilience.
And so resilience thinking we've already touched on because we talked about an example in another area of life. So how resilience thinking sounds like? Well, it's actually, you know what, I think at this point it's just great to give an example. I see 20 patients a day, 5 days a week, every year. And so this is what those who have developed resilience thinking sound like in a setback, right? It's like, okay.
Can you give an example, like what a setback would be?
Sure. Remember the classic, one is an overeating episode. Plan A and B happened. Uh-oh. Setback, natural. Be prepared. They will happen. 2, getting on the scale, seeing it go up, or not going down when you had anticipated that, or again, being exposed to your body image. That's a really strong one. Having a plan to track your food and then missing all the tracking and not doing it. These things will happen. How will you respond to it? Those with resilience who have developed it, these are the kind of thoughts you'll see. You'll see, great reminder, I love this one. Great reminder how tough this is. They're showing respect for their struggle. They understand that it's difficult. What a great reminder how tough this is. But as I've done so many times before, I've learned that it's not whether this happens, but my response to that this has happened that will determine my success. That's going to be what drives my story. That's going to be what writes my story of success. Not whether this happened, but how I respond to this. And then you'll see, and we train this. This is called a mindfulness exercise. People out there might have heard about how mindfulness can be so well integrated into behavioral weight management. Here's a great example. The mindfulness exercise, you'll ask someone to stop and notice how they feel. Because they're no longer self-critical, we've helped them challenge and replace their self-critical thoughts with facts. So now they're able to find just simple negative emotions. Someone will say, let me sit with this. I'm recognizing that, I feel mild dissatisfaction. I feel mild regret. I'm mildly unhappy. Let me really sit with these feelings. I don't like them. Overeating can happen or an off-track day can happen, but let me remember that this is where it lands. Let me remember that this is the immediate result. And I don't like this feeling. Physically, I don't feel great. And again, this is not in line with my goals.
That sounds wonderful, but I mean, that sounds like a really big leap from, I can't imagine.
I'm so stupid, I'll never be able to do
Yeah,
that.
I mean, I ate, if I ate all those chips or I had a really big meal I knew I probably shouldn't have, how long does it take to get, that's a really big leap to go from that disappointment to, this is tough, but I recognize this is a learning opportunity.
It's actually a confidence issue. It's a great question. So how long does confidence take to build? How long does resilience take to build? The short answer is it's actually an extremely variable trait. There's so many genetic and environmental and developmental issues that go into developing resiliency and confidence that it's very common in a comprehensive program like ours where we're full developmental history through someone's early years to understand what were the events that have possibly shaped their capacity at resilience or their capacity at building confidence. So the short answer is it's extremely variable. And those who need support, though, can find it, right, in a supportive, evidence-based program. And that's often the important turn for someone who goes from struggling with their weight through their life to becoming successful. If you think there's 40 other things to get good at in weight management, there aren't. This is one of the absolute key skills that can be developed and is a big predictor of someone doing well long term. So to summarize, just to make these points, in behavioral change, setbacks are to be expected. The only guarantee I ever give to anyone. Success is determined not by the setback, but by your response, how you respond to it, and specifically your thinking. So identify and challenge any automatic self-critical thoughts that might be creating negative emotions or a pattern of becoming an ostrich. Mm-hmm. And learn that resilience and resilient thinking will allow this learning to take place. You'll grow and you'll eventually become successful, or have, let's put it this way, your best chance at becoming successful long term if it's based on a strong foundation of resilience.
Great. Well, we are going to move to the question period in just a moment. So everyone is reminded they have the opportunity to send Dr. Macklin questions, and that's in the bottom left hand of your screen. You can type away. Your questions will only be seen by our side. It is anonymous, and we will keep it that way. So feel free to send us questions. In the meantime, I'm going to, and also there is a reminder that you will be receiving a survey today. At the end, once you close, you'll be receiving a survey within the next 24 hours. We are still very new with the online seminar format, and we do value your feedback. Now I'm going to take 30 seconds while Dr. Macklin reviews the questions and to tell you more about weight management at Medcan. So Dr. Macklin has spent over 15 years of his medical career supporting weight loss and treating those who want to achieve their best weight. He calls it a journey for good reason, as we learned today. Today we spoke about resilience, and resilience is one of the many aspects of the weight management journey, as you probably understand now. Our program is all about helping you understand the whole picture so you can establish the mindset that allows you to overcome the obstacles between you and your healthy best weight. We use our expertise in behavioral therapy and nutrition science to help you build life-changing. With a full year of one-on-one guidance from Dr. Macklin and a dedicated registered dietitian, weight management clients build skills for a lifetime of success. Now, if you are interested in learning more, please visit medcan.com or call us at the number on the screen. Taruna or another member of the team will be happy to get back to you. Now, Dr. Macklin, we do have quite a number of questions, so let's get straight to them.
I love this one. Can I start with this one?
Sure.
So one of the first questions here is my target is to lose 50 pounds. What's the best way to get there? It's fascinating. So let me see if I can make this as clear as possible. In my clinical practice, and really this is consistent amongst the practices of all my colleagues across really North America, we in this field don't talk about target weights. We don't talk about goal weights. We use the phrase best weight. You even heard that a few times through our presentation today.
Yeah.
The definition of best weight is as follows. Best weight means that we ask an individual to find the absolute least the least amount of food and drink that they can take in regularly while still very much enjoying their life. We would say, please don't go below that. There's no point, because you'll get to a weight where that weight will become non-sustainable and you'll be at high risk of regaining. So we say, find the least amount of food and drink that you can take in while still enjoying your life, and let your biology tell you where that goes. The human body, as we lose weight, will start to push back. We know in all the complexities, remember that graph I showed earlier, there are 7 or 8 clear signals that the body will manufacture to get you to raise your weight back up to its original one. And so how much your body is going to push back, we don't know. It's really presumptuous for me to know or for an individual to know. And instead, develop that lifestyle that's sustainable. You'll lose weight, and it'll slow and slow and slow, and you'll land at your best weight. Where you land is what we call your best weight, and you're as likely as best to stay there because you arrived with a lifestyle that you can maintain by definition. That's the picture of someone who's got a best shot at losing weight and keeping it off. Not easy, but something that is certainly possible.
So they would probably speak to you about understanding that best weight with more details and understanding what's a craving or what's something they can withstand holding off on.
Right, so in a comprehensive program with all their obstacles being dealt with as best as possible, then someone will be able to achieve the least amount of food and drink that will see them land at a weight. Don't go below that. So it's recommended that if you eat very little, which we can do as humans, anyone can muster up willpower and drive their weight down well below their best weight. Unfortunately, the experience with the great majority, if not almost all, will be that they'll have the often very negative experience of regaining weight. You can imagine that the resilience skill then really takes a back seat because of the perceived failure of regaining weight. It makes work a lot harder for us behaviorists to help develop resilience when those experiences happen.
Okay, so let's go to this question. I exercise a lot, but I'm not losing weight. Why is that? So I exercise a lot.
Okay, so that's a loaded question. I love that question. I will always tell the individuals, actually to anyone who listens, that I consider exercise to be the single greatest behavior available to humans to both reduce risk of illness, to improve mood, to improve quality of life. The benefits are actually endless. The one thing that and I know it sounds like an injustice, the one thing that we see that exercise does not contribute significantly to at all is weight loss. We see all these year after year clinical trials that show us that a method of losing weight by increasing your exercise levels doesn't create weight loss and is actually a recipe for frustration. So someday we will rebrand exercise as the greatest behavior available to humans from a fitness and quality of life and disease risk reduction perspective, while not a great tool and only an addendum or an adjunct to weight loss, which is really much more about the eating behavior and all the challenges that humans have in not eating too much.
And that's what we're learning now with The Biggest Loser. There was a big feature article and investigation on that, just that those contestants were regaining weight after the show where they were really working hard and exercise and lost all this weight, but they've regained it.
It's actually a great example of people going past their best weight. Establishing a lifestyle that is unsustainable for a temporary period of time is possible for humans. We can do a lot. But they arrived at a weight their body was, to put it in human perspective, their body was just unhappy with, right? Because the signals from their body at that point, what that study told us, the signals from their body, which are from their bone, from their muscle, from their gut, all affecting their brain, from their stomach and from their fat cells, all going to their brain to say, let's go and gain weight. So metabolism goes down, appetite goes up, interest in food goes up, and fullness goes down.
Okay, we have a few questions, so let's get through these. Now, do medications to treat anxiety or depression cause weight gain?
Short answer, yes. There's actually very few weight-neutral medications in depression and anxiety. It's one more piece of the puzzle that helps someone understand that this is much more than just eating less and moving more. This is a complex disorder. Mm-hmm. Medications and anxiety and schizophrenia, most notably, and depression certainly have weight gain effects.
All right. Why is it harder to lose more weight after achieving a successful weight loss, especially as we grow older, if you're, in your 70s, late 60s, 70s, 80s?
I like that question, right? They're kind of talking about best weight there, I think. Mm-hmm. Why is it harder to lose more weight after achieving a successful weight loss? Right? Isn't the successful weight loss meaning they kind of arrived where their body's going to be okay, and eating less would only result in a lifestyle that's unsustainable? So the answer is because it would take a lifestyle that's unsustainable. You'd have to go past your best weight.
All right, we have one last question.
Sure.
Can you point us to a couple of websites or books or resources that you like? Or is there something, anything that you would recommend that people can?
I know this is going to sound like a cop-out, but there's no other complex medical condition that we say, now you've got this complex, difficult to manage medical condition, and so my advice to you is go read a book, right? That's not really how we practice medicine. What we do is and it's respectful of the struggle to say to someone that there isn't a simple solution. It's not going to be on pages 10 or 12 or 15 of that new book. It's not going to be about diet, and it's not going to be going on a diet. It's not going to be about exercise. It's going to be about behavioral change, and all the complexities of weight management deserve treatment. And so we will see over the coming years where people who struggle with their weight, many more. In fact, in Ontario, I'd suggest available resources that are even within the medical system that help them address this difficult challenge of getting to a best weight.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Macklin. We really appreciate it. And thank you to everyone who joined us.